So my name's Harry Skeggs. I'm a fine art wildlife photographer, animal lover and travel enthusiast. I fell in love with wildlife long before I ever picked up a camera. My work has taken me across the globe to over 100 countries. And we're headed to the Antarctic Peninsula and the subantarctic, both to document the amazing wildlife out there, but also to witness firsthand the effects of climate change.
Z9 has been absolutely epic out here. It's fixed all the flaws of traditional wildlife cameras and high-resolution cameras. That trade-off no longer really exists, and you can have the best of both worlds. It produces shots that you just couldn't do before. And rarely do I focus on equipment, but it's a game changer for me.
Fine art photography is about light, not subject. That's what I firmly believe. It's too easy to get stuck behind a camera, following a subject and thinking that's what makes a perfect photograph. If you find that perfect piece of light, any subject that presents itself can be the best photograph of your life. But you can be in front of the most enigmatic animal on earth, and if the rest that's around it doesn't work, the light, the background, the scenery, then it's always going to be a 2 out of 10. Light is how you tell your story. And in a world of climate disaster and environmental change, we're not looking necessarily to talk about beautiful things. Often as photographers, we want to talk about destruction, about loss, about how our animals are disappearing. And you can't necessarily always achieve that just by showing beautiful photographs. So bad light can work to your advantage. When we were out in Jason Harbour with the fog, is exactly the narrative device I was looking for. I mean, often that would be considered boring, flat light, but allowing subjects to disappear gives you exactly that kind of narrative. So it's about identifying light, but also having a very clear idea of how you're using that light to tell a story.
By using a wide angle, you can get close, and like you'll see that they came super close to us, so you make your profile pretty small and they'd come and check you out. I'm going for something a little bit more like ethereal and different and kind of ghostly. And that you need some sort of challenging light for that to work well. But trying to get the hierarchy is super important.
The Z range is fundamentally changing the way that I photograph. Historically, I'd always been a prime lens user. Suddenly, there are zoom lenses that perform optically as well as historic primes. This gives me such a range of possibilities in terms of composition at a twist of a wrist. A really good example of this is as we pulled away from Elephant Island, a huge iceberg slipped by with this colony of chinstrap penguins. It was there for seconds. And by running out and having such a flexible lens meant that I could catch that moment where otherwise it would be so easy to miss. Technique is hugely important to photography, but technique itself doesn't make good photographs. So having a camera as advanced and as powerful as the Z9, taking elements out of the equation, like the auto eye tracking, means that I spend much more time thinking about the frame, about the art of the frame, composition, lighting, much less about specific details of focus, and that completely empowers me as an artist. We really put the eye tracking through its paces. Shooting out in the fog in Jason Harbour, you have such a risk of hunting for focus. You have all these different planes of recession. So the fact that it can still pick out eyes in that kind of condition, it's the most effective, most powerful autofocus I've ever seen. Having something like a multi-tilt axis on a camera means that you can play around with that angle really easily. One of the quickest ways of changing your photography and improving it is by thinking about the angle that you shoot at. Something as simple as just changing the angle that you look at something can radically change the relationship between your subject and yourself. Getting down low will massively emphasize the size of your subject. The reason looking down on a subject doesn't work is that you diminish it. Whereas by getting down on its level, you're making a much more direct relationship, an eye-to-eye relationship, and that's always what creates engagement. As soon as I hit land on Fortuna Bay, I could immediately see that the sun was setting over the top of the mountains and we were losing the light on the colony. So the very first thing I did was absolutely hightail it up there to see if I could still capture that moment. And as soon as we arrived there, there was this beautiful colony, but there was quite a distance which we had to maintain. And out of the ether, these two penguins approached us for literally a couple of seconds. And I knew, as we had this sort of setting sun over the top of the mountain, I wanted to just catch a little catchlight in that eye. But that moment only happened for a millisecond. And having that frame rate in a camera like the Z9, it's something I've never had before, because I've always used these large sensors to get the large size prints. But suddenly being able to shoot at 20 FPS whilst have this sensor ability, it's a complete game changer. I love showing wildlife on a heroic scale, but that's so important to get the right level of detail, and that's why having these huge sensors is really important. But that's always come with trade-offs. Trade-offs in ISO-ability, trade-off in frame rates per second. Suddenly, there's a camera which doesn't really seem to have a weakness, and it opens up such a range of opportunities, and I can shoot wildlife at fractions of a second, multiple frames a second, but still get this incredible scale, this incredible detail, and it's become the world's most powerful wildlife camera. Antarctica was a tough shoot. Things were not going my way. And so to have a camera that allowed me to make the most of what opportunities I did get made all the difference. And I know that I should be saying it, but it's the very best camera I've ever used, and I am thrilled to have it in my bag for years to come.